Hello, welcome to Big Guy Boards. I'm Scott. Should you ride exactly the same volume for all your boards? We have a lot of discussion about volume on the Big Guy Boards forum. Recently I had an opportunity to test this. Both of these boards are a very similar volume. This is 43.85 litres. This one is 43.5 litres. I rode them both in exactly the same session. I was swapping between boards and I got some really interesting insights into riding surfboard the same volume, but obviously different design characteristics. So I'm going to be discussing that in the video. Towards the end of the video, I've got a brand new Lost surfboard here. At the time of filming, this isn't even on the Lost website. Based on what I found out from this experiment, I'm going to be talking about how I selected the volume for this board. Okay, so I'll talk about the features of both boards. We'll do a kind of comparison between the two, and then I'll kind of discuss what I found from riding both boards at the same volume. So this is a Lost round-nosed fish. This is a 6.2, as I said, 43.85 litres, 22.35 wide, 2.7 thick. Hopefully when you saw it stood next to the Uber XL there a minute ago, you know, the first thing straight away you would have noticed is the added width in the nose, which is what you'd expect from a fish template. A lot of width running right the way through the length of the board. It's always quite rectangular. Tail gets pulled in, there's almost like a little inverted hip there on the tail. But there's width carried all the way through the board. Hopefully you can see on the picture there as well. Very flat rocker. There's a tiny bit of lift in the nose right towards the end, but it's, you know, it's extremely flat board, which is again the kind of thing you'd expect from a fish. Right, I'll now bring the XL over and we'll do a comparison. Okay, rocker. So hopefully you can see in the picture there. Not sure how well this looks on camera, but there's a slightly more rocker in the Uber XL. Not by much, but the fish is definitely a flatter board, especially out through the nose. The XL's not got a lot of rocker either for a kind of short board. It's more of a daily driver, so it's kind of a step up from a grovel board, but a step down from a performance board. But it still has a bit more rocker, which I think makes a massive difference in how a board paddles. I'm going to carefully put this board down and then I'll explain that a bit more. So hopefully you got a good look at the rocker there of the two boards. That makes a big difference to me with regards to how a board feels like it paddles. Obviously there are other factors as well that kind of alter when you change the rocker on a board, but paddle wise, if you imagine a completely flat board, a lot more of the underside of the board is going to be in contact with the water, which is going to make it feel a lot easier to paddle. If you've got more of a rockered board, all the underside won't be in contact with the water, and it will therefore feel slightly more difficult to paddle. Width of the nose as well, obviously it's noticeably different. This isn't a massively wide nose, but obviously it's more pointy, shortboard type nose than that one. It's not a massively pointy nose. This is more of a daily driver, so it's meant to be you know, for average waves, so there's still a bit of width in the nose to help you paddling into more average waves and to help you maintain speed. Obviously significantly different to that board. The tail's more pulled in as well, for a bit more performance when you're turning. There's a lot less thickness running through the tail and through the nose of this board. This one's got more of a kind of evenly spaced foil, so it's kind of a lot of the thickness is even throughout the board. A lot of the thickness in this one is more under the chest. So they are completely different boards in a lot of senses, although they're exactly the same volume. Right, so now I'm going to talk about how they felt and whether I think you should stick with the same volume. So two boards with almost exactly the same volume, different design characteristics. How did they feel to surf? Right, well, paddle wise, this was, as you'd imagine, loads easier to paddle. Just paddling around the lineup was, you know, just felt completely different to the Uber XL. Paddling for waves, it was getting into waves really easy. So that was great. What I found was, actually up and riding on the wave, the board felt too big. It felt really wooden. I was really struggling to get any type of decent turns on it. It was gliding down the line really nicely, but yeah, it just felt kind of wooden for me. Now, for me, that isn't down to the overall design of the board. I think just this board with this design was too big for me. In fact, I found it quite easy to paddle, loads easier than the Uber XL. I think I could come down by a good 2, maybe 3 inches, depending on what volume I'd end up with. And for me, I've mentioned it a few times before with grovel boards, I prefer to be shorter with a grovel board to fit into the pocket of the wave when the wave is smaller. And for me, I would be using this more of a type of grovel board. So I'm not going to do a full review on the board. I think it would be unfair. As I think the board's the wrong size for me. The guy that was riding it, interestingly, James, was getting on really well with it. He was having an absolute blast. Obviously, this volume in this board suits him quite well. But yeah, so I think by coming down a good 2 or 3 inches, this design would still feel about as easy to paddle around and catch waves on than a slightly higher volume shortboard. So that's definitely something to consider when you're looking at the volume of your surfboards. Some people do religiously go for the same volume with every board, and that's completely up to them. But I think it's specifically for bigger, heavier surfers. When you're getting into the higher volumes, you then start getting into, generally longer length boards, which can kind of hinder you. And I think if certain boards have the characteristics that allow you to bring the volume down, I think I'd really advise people to have a go at doing that. So yeah, now I'm going to talk about the new Lost board. This is the Lost Hydra! Wow! So I've had this board a couple of days now. Yeah, 2 days. I'm not going to do a full review now. I've only surfed it once. But the reason I'm showing you this now is talking about volume and how you select the right volume for your boards. So based on my experience here, I'm now confident that if I'm getting more of a small wave grovel type of board, I'm really happy to come down in volume as long as it's got the kind of characteristics that are going to allow me to paddle easily. So this one's got a lot of width running through the nose, similar to the round nose fish. It's got a relatively low rocker as well, pretty flat, which you'd expect from a grovel board. Loads of width in the tail, so it's going to allow me to maintain the speed. There's a little hip there, but it's still quite a lot of width despite the hip. Yeah, so it's going to be fine paddling into waves, it's going to be fine generating and maintaining speed. And as I've said before, I always want to reduce the length of my boards in small waves so it kind of fits into the waves a bit better. And so far it seems like it's worked really well. Paddling around on this and catching waves, it seems almost the same as something that's 5 inches longer and 3 litres more. So some people think you just need extra length to make a board paddle better. For me, there's a lot more to take into account than that. So hopefully this might show some people out there who are looking at grovel boards, especially a heavier person. Generally you're looking at a grovel board, if you're a heavier person, you're looking over 6 foot. But I'd say look at bringing the length down. If it's got the right characteristics to make it easier to paddle, just experiment, try it a bit shorter and see how you go. You might really enjoy it. Thanks for watching.